Hey there, everybody. It's Eternal Snowman here with another episode of TLT Recap Analysis. This time, I'm going to be going over the quarterfinals recap and the predictions for semifinals. And if you guys haven't watched it already, I did upload my matchup versus Star Real, which I did lose. Um, so at the end of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about like my kind of journey through TLT as well, kind of what happened and what I enjoyed from it. So first off, the big thing that stands out, everybody here who won was actually the higher seed. So we'll actually see in the semifinals the 1, 2, and 4 seed. The 3 seed APW lost to me. So Star Real instead will be taking the place, who would be the second highest seed in that bracket. So ended up being that the higher seeds tended to do well, although not really surprising because people who finished with higher seeds tended to be players who were better in general anyway. But the big surprise here was Team Charm versus Sensei Axio, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So the other three games, Kather versus Ars9, Luthier versus Decim, and Stariel versus myself, ended in 4 games with them all being relatively convincing. Kather dropped one, they both dropped 1 game, Kather and Luthier, and both of them were relatively convincing. The games they dropped were kind of bad matchup, and also when you're playing against players who are like basically at this level, it's hard to really get a clean sweep unless you're so far ahead of them. And still beating Ars9 and Decim in 4 games is very impressive in both cases. And then myself versus Stariel was very impressive as well. He actually beat me in my locked tier. I'll talk about a little bit later about like my regrets kind of in this game, or in the series. But the only game that he actually lost to me was mostly because of luck. Like he should have won that Uber's game, and I only won because I dodged a play rough. Like I made a wrong read and I dodged the play rough. So um, yeah, he definitely should have won that game if not for me getting lucky. And same kind of situation for some of the other games as well were very clean. So Star Real definitely looking really good out of everybody who qualified for the semifinals. Had the cleanest set. The only game that wasn't that clean was, or the only set that wasn't that clean was in fact the Team Charm versus Sensei Axio one. Sensei Axio actually looked really good in the first 2 games, having very dominating victories. And then Team Charm actually pulled off 2 different quote unquote cheese wins, as I would say. Brought hard HO, and in both of the games that he did, he actually succeeded and won very cleanly won in a pretty convincing manner in the first one. The second game was, I believe, OU that he won. Um, and that one was pretty good as well. This was actually no cheese. And it seems that Team Charm's strength is going to actually be the OU, which will actually present an interesting matchup versus Star Rio, whose definite strength is OU. But the most actually important game to look at is the 5th game, where Team Charm was able to defeat Sensei Axio in what I could only describe to be a really bad game that shouldn't have, isn't really representative of both of these players, hopefully, but it does reflect badly on both Team Charm and Sensei Axio to a certain extent, who, after being out of the tournament doesn't matter that much, but um, it does reflect badly on Team Charm's chances going forward because this game was like, there were at least like 3 or 4 different chokes from both sides on this game where they both had made significant misplays, and it ended with Team Charm winning. Although after watching the game, I just can't be happy with that result because like basically Sensei actually probably would have won from like turn 2 if he just didn't switch out his Sigilif. He was trying to play around what I presume to be CM Cresselia. But yeah, he didn't. He ended up switching out his Sigilif from a winning position. Um, and then Team Charm also didn't click like Meteor Beam with his Omastar. Like I think he said he calced incorrectly, and some other stuff. And there was multiple things that happened in this game, in this NU game, that were just really bad from both sides. So although Team Charm did win, I do still think that Team Charm is the weakest out of these 4 players left. I also want to note that Basically, my pre-tournament predictions right now, or like early season predictions, with my top 5 players being Kather, Luthier, Trade, Decim, and GXE. Luthier has now eliminated 2 of those other top 5. Trade dropped out for personal reasons, and Kather is the other one there. So Luthier definitely looking the strongest in terms of what I believe the power level of the players were coming into this. I had Sensei Axio as one of the higher players to look out for as well, and coming from like starting from the bracket, I did say that starting from the round of 32, that Sensei Axio kind of should be the one to make it out of this side of the bracket. And although he had a strong round of 32 and round of 16 performance, this round of 8 performance really let him down. Even though he did start with 2 extremely like strong games where it was very convincing, that final game in NU was pretty damning. So with that said, I do really like seeing Team Charm move forward. Although I probably will be predicting against Team Charm, I do think that it is really good to see that Tours Room talent, as you will, somebody who's new to the scene, who hasn't really been playing profession or like not professionally, but like Pokemon like competitively for a long time, do so well in kind of these tournaments is kind of what I like to see. And I'm looking forward to BLT to see where some, not only Team Charm, but some of the other Tours Room players who were able to perform extremely well here, like Siffy Khan and some of the other players who had kind of a breakout tournament, if you will, how well they'll fare in the upcoming BLT. But with that said, let's move on to the predictions for the semifinals. So Kather versus Luthier and Team Charm versus Starreal. I think Kather versus Luthier is definitely the more interesting of these 2 matchups. I think, as I touched on earlier, Team Charm versus Starreal, I think Starreal is actually looking extremely good right now. Starreal and Luthier are the 2 players that I have my eye on the most because Luthier having both convincing matchups against some of the top players, as well as beating 2 of the what I believed to be the top 5 players coming into the tournament, is like a really good reflection on him. And if he's able to beat Kather, I do think that this should be kind of the, like a magnum opus kind of performance here. Obviously, Luthier also coming into the tournament had probably the biggest accolades in terms of personal accomplishments, having, won LC Open in the past, as well as had a lot of individual good performances in different team tournaments as well. So obviously he comes in at a different level as some of these other players, but still, if he does manage to take this home, even with like kind of the smaller tournament that TLT is, this is kind of like a magnum opus type of performance where it really shows how good of a player he can be. Because some of the players that he beat along the way, even if it was kind of a smaller tournament, beating GXE, if he does beat Kather and Starreal and Decim, coming up to this, definitely going to be a huge performance from him. That said, I do think he is going to be favored here versus Kather. I mean, the seeds here don't really matter. I think from this point onwards, the seeds like barely mattered at like for a while actually. But in terms of just like being a indicator of how good players are. But yeah, I think Kather versus Luthier is definitely going to be Luthier favored here. I think this will even be 4 games. I think Luthier has had probably the strongest performances up until now, having shown proficiency in almost every tier. And with the overlapping strengths, with Kather's strongest tier being LC, I don't think he is as good as Luthier here. So I do think Luthier is going to be the one to take this one, and I do think it's not going to be that close. I'll favor Luthier here 60-40, but and yeah, so I do think that Kather could potentially still win this. He needs to do like really good prep and really outplay, and I think that LC game is probably going to be pretty crucial if he wants to actually have a foothold in this series. I think Luthier is much better at a lot of the lower tiers as well, and tiers like OU, which I believe Luthier should lock. I do think that OU is his biggest advantage. And Kather should try to scrap up some wins in some of the other tiers, like potentially trying to exploit Luthier's weakness in Ubers. Although I don't really see Kather as a strong Ubers player himself, so he really needs to have really good prep, and if he wants to take this victory. The other matchup I think is a little bit less interesting. I think Star Real is clearly much better in my eyes than Team Charm. Although Team Charm has had a much better team selection, much better play throughout the course of the tournament, and I do give him like a lot of props for being able to beat Sensei Axio. I do think in terms of performance wise, Star Real it did have just a much better performance last round than Sensei Axio did, and I do think Star Real kind of is looking the best he has all tournament. That victory last time, I'm obviously a little bit biased playing against him myself, but uh, he won basically all 4 games that he played against me, including or excluding even the OU game. So the 4 games that he won didn't include the OU game, which would have been the 5th game had it gone to that. But yeah, his team prep has been on point, whether that be from himself or like getting from other top players. But a lot of the resources and everything is pointing to Star Real being towards that top level. I do think it's going to be Star Real versus Luthier in the finals, and I do think Luthier will probably win that, but um, we'll see how everything shakes out. Obviously, all of these matchups are still pretty close. So I wouldn't be that surprised if Kather won. I would be relatively surprised if Team Charm won. But I do think that it's still possible for all of these players. And I would say Stario is favored here 65-35. But um, if we do end up seeing one of these like quote unquote upsets happen, I do think that it would be pretty interesting for a finals. But yeah, so I'll talk a little bit here about my TLT journey. So coming into the tournament, I think I was already at a pretty big disadvantage compared to past TLTs. I had very little experience in a lot of the Gen 8 tiers, seeing as my biggest strengths in Gen 8 are actually lie in doubles, which actually they chose to exclude from the tournament. I didn't really make a pre-TLT video about this, like a format kind of thing, like I normally do, but had I done that, I probably would have complained a little bit about doubles not being in. Um, and yeah, with the DLC dropping and everything, I was pretty unfamiliar with basically everything. So that was really reflected in my early performances because my 3-2 record was actually, I think, mostly because I had a lack of experience in a lot of the lower tiers. And the lower tiers were actually very similar to what the what they were in the past before the DLC, which is partially why I think I had a little bit of an advantage coming into the first few rounds of playoffs because with a lot of the lower tiers being shaken up a significant amount and the meta was relatively unsolved, a lot of the things that I was able to do, that's kind of where I believe a lot of my strengths lie as a team builder because I'm able to like come up with teams even without the help of like top players and have relatively competent teams. But when the meta becomes more and more solved and I have less experience in those tiers, I often don't see the meta trends or whatever, and I may be weak to some of those things, which is what happened kind of in my series versus Star Real. So although I had pretty good performances in the first 2 rounds of playoffs in top 8, I did falter with team selection, especially. I do think that I made a pretty significant mistake in LC not bringing a way to deal with screens specifically because I was of the mindset of trying to deal with webs, which is why you saw dual wing beat on my Volby, for example. And then I also made a few crucial misplays throughout the course of the set. But I think most notably, I was not able to capitalize on my locked tier throughout the course of this tournament. I had locked OU a couple times and LC a couple times, but in all of those cases, I wasn't able to actually get an advantage through my locked tier because I wasn't better than a lot of players even in that locked tier, which is kind of a testament to the fact that my best tier in Gen 8 is doubles, and my strengths in other tiers mostly lie as like versatility. So I'm able to play a lot of tiers at a decently high level, but nothing at an extremely high level. which is a little bit different from the position I was in a few tournaments ago, like last year in TLT, where in Gen 7, I think in LC, UU, Ubers, I was better than most of the players at all of those tiers. So I had different options to lock as well as versatility. I do think that in general, in Gen 8, I haven't been as good as in Gen 7 as of right now. And that's like both in relation to different results that I've had, as well as just my personal thoughts on my proficiency. So because of that, I do think that like top 8 was basically all I could expect, unless I basically got super lucky where my team prep was extremely on point and I got like 90 to 10 matchup or like basically significant advantages from just team builder. I do think like in terms of overall play, I think that like players like Luthier, Kather, GXC, Star Real were better than me this tournament. So top 8 is kind of like my expected finish. So I'm pretty happy from that perspective. Um, I had some decent wins over some players. You know, got somewhat lucky in some of those wins as well. But yeah, pretty overall, like in terms of my overall performance, I do feel pretty good about it. Um, Moving forward, obviously, we're going to be the next Tours Room tournament is going to be BLT. So I'm going to be looking forward to that. I don't actually know what role I'm going to be in BLT yet. I haven't really decided whether or not we're going to be managing. Me and Trace are going to be managing again. So we'll see how everything shakes down later in the year when that starts to happen. But up until then, we'll have one more TLT video, but I'll probably be trying to keep my content a little bit more consistent this year. So it won't just be the BLT and the TLT stuff. I'll try to talk a little bit more or do a little bit more VGC stuff, a little bit more, other casual Pokemon stuff. So hope you guys tune into that. And if you guys want to see any sort of different content from me, please let me know in the comment section down below. I'm still open to suggestions. I do want to be making and uploading videos throughout the course of the year, but I just don't know what people would want to see. So if you guys have any ideas, then be sure to hit me up with that. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next TLT video. Of course, that one's going to be the finals predictions with the semifinal recap. Um, so uh, until then, I'll see you guys. I'll see you guys then in the next episode of TLC Recap Analysis. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed, if you did, please leave a like and subscribe if you aren't already. So yeah.